We are now broadcasting live. We'll wait for some folks to file in, obviously, and they are, as expected. It's good to see everybody here. Randy, it's good to see you. I hope you had a good New Year.
Yes, and you, Rob. I hope so too.
Did. Aaron, I hope you had a lovely New Year. You've got certainly a great haircut to go with it.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, the hair was like very, very long. I had enough to cut off, enough to donate to Wigs for Kids, and then it was still down to here. So uh, anyway, you don't want to hear about my hair.
Well, not at the moment, but
Good.
maybe later.
Looks good. Looks
Maybe later.
Folks are filing in. That's very good to see. It's good to see everybody here. This is our second of our Zoom previews with Randy Lawrence, who is the man who has brought us and who is named the Alfred Pennyworth collection that is going to be in the auction that begins on Thursday, the second round. It's a terrific thrill to have this particular collection, one of the best known for many reasons, and we'll get to that shortly, but certainly one of the best Batman collections of all time. Randy, you certainly must be thrilled to have the second round beginning, given the fact that you had tremendous success just a few weeks ago with the first round.
Yeah, it was, it was a big breath, after the first one was over. It's very, it's kind of scary, when you don't have reserves and they're your babies and you're letting them go and you don't know what's going to happen. But hey, I came to Heritage because I knew you guys were who you are, and I've been doing business with you guys for so long that I put my trust and everything went well. And a lot of people out there are going to have some nice gems to add to their collections. And it just keeps going. It just keeps going. And here we are with part two. And with all the weeklies that are going to happen, there's a lot of books first to come. So it's exciting.
Excellent. Well, I'm Robert Wolonsky, the communications director here at Heritage. For the next half hour, 45 minutes, Randy Lawrence and Aaron White in our comics department, who has known Randy for a very long time, will be discussing the Randy Lawrence's Alfred Pennyworth collection and the comics that will be in this auction that begins January 14th. In fact, I'll go ahead and show you what we're talking about here, which is the signature sale that begins on the 14th at noon Central Time. This is a comic auction that has certainly gotten a lot of publicity, given the fact that this is the one that has Batman #1 in it. Which is already going to become the highest price ever paid for a Batman comic book anywhere.
I wish that was mine.
Yeah, man. How come you didn't have a Batman #1?
The two issues that eluded me, one in Detective 27, just never got there. But I'm so happy that my stuff is alongside this #1 because it doesn't get any better. So we all fit together perfectly.
Well, it is extraordinary. There has certainly been a great deal of media attention given the Batman #1 in the last couple of days, especially in the UK. But to be part of this auction certainly has to be, as you said, a big thrill, given the fact that you have a comic book that is now the highest price. I think it's the most expensive Silver Age comic book ever. Is that correct, Aaron?
Silver Age Batman.
Silver Age Batman, I mean, yes.
Yeah.
And we can actually, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but certainly this is when the auction begins. So if you go to heritageha.com, you'll see here that the floor session begins at noon Central. And you just click here and you can search it by any number of ways to see where the auction is, highest price, earliest comic book and pieces of art that are in that particular auction. That's how you do it. If you have questions for Randy or for Aaron, I don't assume you have any for me, but feel free to ask anything you'd like in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And we'll get to those questions over the course of the next half hour, 45 minutes. That's why we're here. And look, we'll start here, I guess, with this this Detective 359. But Randy, before we actually talk about specific comics, for those who aren't familiar with your story, and it's a very extraordinary one. I wrote about it last year. You and I talked about it last year with Aaron as we did one of these previews. But let's talk a little bit about it. Let's sort of give the shorter version about the fact that 2 years ago, in fact, 2 years ago this month, these comic books actually were stolen from a storage unit in Florida where you were keeping them. And it took you a very long time, and you almost single-handedly got them back and brought them to Heritage Auctions. Yeah, would you like to give the short version of that story?
Sure. I've been collecting since I'm 6 years old. I had every title out there. And after many years, I decided to go narrow and deep and just collect my favorite, Batman and detectives. And I sold all my comics over the years and put all that money into these two titles. And it's funny, I always kept everything in storage units, whether it was in Manhattan or Long Island or in, always in storage units. And I never had a problem, and in hindsight, I guess it was kind of stupid to keep this kind of stuff in a storage unit, but I always felt protected and safe. And it finally bit me in the butt. And a father and son, legally, they got a unit. The whole point is that you can get a unit get a unit and pay your month bill and have access to these facilities. And when no one's around and the manager's off, they go over the top of these chicken wire ceilings and they go through your stuff. And I came back one day and everything was gone. And where I had seen them just a short time before, because I used to go 3 or 4 times a week. And that's what these thieves thought, who goes to the storage unit, but they found all my stuff and they took it, and it took me over a year, pretty much single-handedly, with the help of just a couple of people, to help. Problem was I knew who had them. When you get robbed, if you came home from your house on a Saturday night after dinner and your TV was gone and your jewelry was gone, you're like, I've been robbed. But you usually have homeowners insurance and you don't know who took your stuff. And in my case, I had no insurance and I knew who had the stuff. And we went through hell to get them back, but I got them all back. So every book you're seeing in this auction was a stolen comic. And the guys couldn't sell them because they knew I was on their tails, and I was doing everything to pressure them to give the books back. And I was very, very lucky, very lucky.
Well, you knew who had stolen them because they had actually shown up at a comic book shop in Arizona shortly after news broke of the fact that they had been stolen from the storage unit in Florida, correct?
Right. That's how the whole thing came. It's just a crazy story. It was a father and son, as I said, and the son flew to Arizona because his stepfather had shot and killed himself a few days before that. And he took a few of the books to Arizona because he figured he could try and start selling them. And he went to a little local store in Phoenix and he walked in with over $100,000 worth of stuff. And that guy, because we had alerted the media in a 24-hour period, it got spread all over the world that these books had been stolen. And this kid walked in trying to sell 5 books, which were in the last auction. There were 5 Golden Age books. And the guy knew they was my books. And he called me that night. He said, the guy's trying to sell your books here in Arizona. And we got the cops on him and we set up a sting. He was arrested the next day. And it's just incredible how in a 24-hour period after I sent an email out and it got blogged, 24 hours later, the kid was arrested. But he didn't have any other books. He only had those 5. But we knew he had, because we had the videotape of them in the storage facility. We never saw them with comics in their possession, but we knew they walked in with empty bags, and an hour and a half, 3 hours later, they were walking out with those same bags filled up with stuff. And we knew you can't move out with more than you move in. But they couldn't get them. They just couldn't get them. There wasn't enough proof until I put on my Kojak and Columbo coat and made it happen. And my civil attorney and we worked effortlessly and we got them all back. And now they're here for heritage buyers to grab.
Aaron, what were you saying about timing?
Oh, the timing's extraordinary. That it had been a few days. I think you'd said, Randy, since you'd been to the unit. So it'd been a few days that the books had been gone. And within, like you said, 24 hours of you alerting the comic community, those books showed up in a comic shop. If they had shown up 24 hours earlier.
When I walked in the facility, as I realized the books had been stolen, the kid was on the plane. He was in the air flying to Arizona. That's how incredible it is. I realized, that night and sending out an email, and it got so crazy. The next day, I went around to all local comic book stores with a list of all the CGC cert numbers and the titles and everything. And I'd walk into stores and the guys would be like, "You're the guy." And I'm like, "I'm the guy what?" "You're the guy that had all those Batman stolen." It was unbelievable. I didn't even know. It just spread like wildfire. And yeah, he landed, and that afternoon, when he landed in Arizona, he went to this comic book store, and the guy knew about it on the other side of the country. I mean, I got emails from people in Rome, Paris, all over Europe, that these people were like, so sorry, I heard about your collection, we'll be on the lookout. And it was just incredible. It's a movie in the making, I hope. Who knows? But it's an incredible story. And again, all I can say is I was really, really lucky. And don't put your comics in a storage unit. That's all
I think if I've learned anything from my relationship with you, Randy, it's that.
Get a safe, just something. Don't do what I did. That's all I can say.
So before we get to some further discussion, somebody has dropped a question in the Q&A, and it's a very good question. It sort of is something we've addressed, but not really addressed in our first conversation. So somebody posts, Randy, I'm 56. I started a collection in 1975, and I'm very envious of your collection. I could not have shoveled enough driveways or mowed enough lawns to accumulate something as wonderful as this. You are to be commended, and I wanted to thank you for sharing these gems. My question is, how in the world did you ever find these quality items, let alone afford them? Were you a teenage neurosurgeon?
It's funny. It's funny that he said about shoveling driveways, because when I was a kid, this whole thing started. I didn't even know if I would have been a comic book collector. My dad, I think I mentioned this last time, my father, who's no longer with us, also collected comics when he was a boy. He was born in 35. So by 39, 38, 39, he and his friends were buying, trading. He was collecting. And my dad was really an anal kind of guy when it came to collecting. He was always a collector. And he would buy, he bought all these books that were out there, all these early Bats, Detectives, Blue Beetles, Green Lanterns, and he kept everything in these boxes. And there was a knock at the door one day for a paper drive during the war. And my grandmother gave away all my father's comics without him knowing. He came home and all his comics were gone. So we kind of have that thing in common. His comics were basically by his mother and mine by a stranger. But I woke up one Sunday morning in 1966 and there were two comics next to the bed. And my father, every Sunday, when he'd go out Saturday night to pick up the New York Times, he'd buy two comics and put them on the bed next to me. Woke up at this stack of comics and decided to start collecting. And the first two comics I had were an early Spidey and Batman. And I just started collecting. And that's like this guy said, my friend and I, we shoveled driveways in the winter, our allowance. We went to the comic store I think it was every Wednesday, and we bought pretty much everything except not funny books, but every superhero book. I remember buying Hulk 181 for 20 cents. And, that was the time when I was a kid and I was collecting. And eventually you get, as a collector, if you're a collector now buying new things, or you were a Silver Age collector, you want to get how it all started, back to the beginning. And being a Batman fan, I wanted to get into the Golden Age. And they were expensive books, even if you bought a fair copy or a VG copy, they were still kind of pricey. And that's how it started. And I was always upgrading. Whenever something would come up, I'd upgrade. And then when CGC came along, I sent everything to them. And I realized what I thought I had that was so terrific was nice, but it wasn't. They were, 5.5s and 6.0s. And every time when Heritage came around and all these other places started having auctions, I always tried to upgrade and sell my undercopy. And it just, I was lucky enough. A lot of people gave me the time to do time payments and pay out items over time to be able to amass the collection. And then it finally got to the point where books had become so expensive, it was so good that to really make it that much better, I had to wait for that one single highest grade copy to hopefully come out. And then it was going to cost me $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. And And, it just, I didn't have the funds. So I just said, you know what? The collection's so terrific. And after what I had gone through with them being stolen and recovered, it was just so stressful that I said, maybe it's time. And the pandemic came around and there weren't any more conventions, which I used to still go to, whether in New York or Florida. And I was seeing that the only avenue people had were eBay or people like, places like Heritage. And Heritage gets the best stuff. And like you mentioned, Aaron and I have known each other a long time. And I always promised Aaron, if when the day came and that I was going to give him and Heritage the collection. And the timing was just right, because I saw how things were selling, not just comics, but antique watches or jewelry or movie posters. And I just saw what people were going to, because they needed to get that issue. And if this was the only way they were going to be able to get it, then so be it. And I gave it up. And like you said, auction was a big success. People jumped on top of the books, and now here's part 2, and part 3 will be in April, and all the weeklies that we have going on probably through April or May. I mean, there's still probably like 1,000 books, 800, 900 books that are still to come. So it's very exciting.
Aaron, do you want to say explain to folks how long Brandy's books will be part of Heritage Auctions in the near future?
Right. Yeah. So we've got books scheduled for quite a while. The next 5 weeks, I want to say.
Yeah.
I want to say it's through sale 8. But we'll be seeing those starting this week. You see more next week and the week after and the week after that. So we've got quite a smattering. You're going to see some Silver Age, a few Golden Age books, Bronze Age. We even got some modern books in the collection, quite a few modern books actually that are very, very cool. So there's a lot of variety coming up in the Alfred Pennyworth collection.
Yeah, I was just telling Aaron, because I didn't know that it was starting this week. There are 70 books in this week's weekly auction, Golden Age and Silver Age, and a lot of surprises. I mean, some really, really great books. So for watching, this stuff there's only a couple of Golden Age in the signature auction, but you have more Golden Age that we didn't get the first auction, which are a little lower grades, 8.0s, stuff like that, in the weekly. That's this week. So check those out too.
Oh yeah.
And they all have the Alfred Pennyworth sticker on them, so you'll be able to decipher. Just on the CGC case, you'll see that round blue bat signal sticker, and yeah.
That's it.
For instance, here, this is a Golden Age that's actually in this week's auction as well.
Yeah, this is
Aaron, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, this is in the signature auction. We held it over, and yeah, it's a beautiful book. It's conserved. Just a lovely copy. So I'm very excited. So it's at 19,500 right now.
It's funny. I didn't know. I went into to GPA and I looked at the census. This is the only Detective 38 conserved book. There's with a conserved label. Everything else is purple label with restoration. So I guess conserved is making the book structurally better without restoration. And I was surprised because I didn't know it. This is the only Detective 38 conserved book there is.
Aaron,
no other grade is conserved.
Aaron, do you want to explain to some folks what the difference is between conserved and restored?
Right. So when we're talking about restored books, we're talking about addition or subtraction from the book. Oftentimes restoration in comics was to make the book look like it's nicer than perhaps it is. So you'd have people adding color, adding ink or paint to the book, sealing tears with glue, or trimming the book around the edges to make the edges sharp. All sorts of things people were doing. In terms of conserved, that is going to be work that is specifically to help maintain the structural integrity of the book. And so there are only certain things that are allowed to be in the conserved label. tear seals for one, being able to seal tears maybe on the spine, maybe in the cover with glue, just as a for example. And so what this book has, tear seals. Rob, can you pull up to the label? And let's take a look at what all we got. Tear seals, cover cleaned, cover reinforced. And so those are often things you'll see on Conserved labels.
Yeah, this was one of the first Golden Age books I bought. I remember being so excited because it was like probably one of the first books I spent real money on when I started buying Golden Age books, and I just to have the first Robin, I was just so over the top, and it was before CGC, and I remember being so careful with this book because it was even like before there were Mylars, you know, it was in a bag and a board, and you know, just so afraid to even open it up. I was, you know, and then along came Mylar and then CGC, and this book has been sealed for a very long time.
The do you remember where you bought this?
I bought it, I believe, in upstate New York at a, I just remember, like, you know, back in the day in the backs of the comics, like we used to buy bags, Robert Bell, you know, we used to look at all the ads in the books where we could get catalogs, or, you know, you would buy stuff sight unseen. A guy said he had a, you know, a Spidey 100 in, you know, near mint. And you just took his word for it, and you sent $15, $20 in the mail, and half time it was cash because kids didn't have checking accounts, and you got this book, and, you know, sometimes you were really happy, sometimes you weren't. And then when CGC came around, books that you thought was so great weren't. Sometimes they had restoration, you got screwed, you know, you couldn't now go find this guy that you bought this book from, you know, 25 years ago in the back of a comic. But that's, you know, what we did. We bought stuff. And I remember as a kid going to, it was a different world. I think we talked about this too. You know, back then, you know, my friends and I, you know, there was no kidnapping a kid. There was no, you know, all this craziness. We just got on a train from Long Island and we went to Manhattan to a comic convention. And I just remember my mother saying, dinner's at 6. You know, we just got, and we went to Manhattan. We're walking around the city. And we went to the McAlpin or the Penta or the Star Trek conventions, and just walked around and, you know, spending our allowance and seeing all these books that, you know, back then I remember seeing Detective 27s and Batman 1s and Superman 1s. You know, it wasn't something you didn't see. But again, back then it was still crazy money. And it was, again, before CGC, so you didn't know if any of these were restored. You know, sometimes the guys would tell you, sometimes they wouldn't. But
of course, crazy money back then was probably what, about $5,000 for a Batman #1?
Right. Oh, you know, I think I told you that. I think I told you that story. I bought that Fantastic Four #1. I saved for weeks and shoveled driveways, and I bought an FF #1 with a big ring stain on the center of it. It was just, it was almost a rag, but it was, at the time, it was the book to have, more than Spidey 1 or Amazing Fantasy 15. FF1 was the book, and I paid $58 for it, and I couldn't believe that I owned an FF1. And I came back home, and I remember my mother said, I was so overjoyed showing her this book that I had, and she was like, "Oh, great, what'd you pay for that?" I said $58, and I still hear the screaming, you know, the screaming that I spent $58 on this thing. It had a stain and a ring stain. And then I sold it many years. It was the stupidest thing I ever did. And I sold it, which I wish I had saved it, because it was the very comic that I spent anything more than, you know, 20 cents or 25 cents on. And years later, I think I sold it for $1,600. And I called her from a payphone. And I told her that I sold it. She told me that was the smartest thing I ever did, buying that book. So kind of funny. But yeah, it's just, you know, kids and comics. Doesn't get much better.
The reason I pulled this one up is because I see you have the artwork for it behind you. Is this one that?
Yeah, the Dick Sprang recreate, yeah.
Is this one that means something special to you to have that particular artwork hanging up?
Well, over the years I collected, I had probably probably one of the biggest recreation collections out there. At one point, I had almost 200, and I had, and at the time, art was still alive. Um, you know, and I had so many of them. I've sold most of them over the years, but Dick's was already passed away, and I was lucky enough. I owned about 7 or 8 of his recreations, and I've inherited a few over the years. As a matter of fact, in this auction, I think I have 2 or 3 Dick Sprang recreations in the auction, and that one I'm holding on to because it's just so classic. But this is the book you're showing is one of only like 2 or 3 golden age books that's in this auction we held back on, and this book's, you know, up I think Aaron, was it like 14 grand? I mean, this book's a $20,000 book, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, the Joker covers are red hot.
It's the highest grade. You know, another thing about this auction, we only have, I think, about 125 books in this auction. But of those 125, 62 of them are highest grade, and 35 of them are the single highest grade. So out of the 125 that are in this auction, 97 of those 125 are the highest graded out there.
Yeah,
So,
here's a Batman 106. That's the highest graded copy. I just grabbed a few. Oh, Polka Dot Man. This is the highest graded copy of the first appearance of Polka Dot Man, and he's going to be in the next Suicide Squad movie.
Yeah.
So this is super cool. First appearance of Jarvis Tech, the Mad Hatter, highest graded copy.
Hold it up a little bit.
You know, when you look at some of these books, you know, there's the single highest grade. It's a 9.0. You know, go find.
It's impossible.
You know, they're impossible to find. And I had an 8.5 for a long time, and like exactly what I was saying before, just waiting for that 190 to show up, and it showed up, and I got it, sold my undercopy, and now it's up for grabs.
Yeah, this is the highest graded copy of Batman 133.
Beautiful cover.
Oh man, it's I love it.
Yeah.
Batmite. I always love Batmite.
I always love Batmite too.
Before we move on, somebody did ask in the questions back to something you mentioned a moment ago, Randy. Somebody says, in recent heritage auctions, I have seen numerous Batman illustrations by many different artists up for auction. Are they yours? If so, which ones were your favorites?
I have given Heritage a lot of Batman art. You know, it's funny. When I decided to sell the collection, I decided to let go a lot of things Batman-wise. I mean, there's things I just can't. I don't know if you can see on the other wall. I may have shown you that before. That's a Bob Kane painting of Batman and Robin. It's just beautiful. Like that, I would never let go. But I have sold through Heritage a lot of illustrations, drawings, recreations. I never got into original art in a big way. My claim to fame is I owned the original cover, the Ramita cover to Spidey 122. Everybody has those stories that they wish they'd never sold it. Yeah, and I've given Heritage a lot of stuff, and some of it's in this auction. There's some really, really great stuff, and they're just beautiful. These Dick Sprang recreations, he was the best. He and Shelley Maldorf, and I have some Maldorfs in this auction too. They made the most beautiful recreations, and I knew Shelley. He lived here in Florida. I was at his apartment on numerous occasions. We had lunch. We had political conversations. He was the nicest man, and he spent so much time, and he cared about some of these recreations so much that, I mean, and then there were the other guys that would just out, or their hands, they didn't have the hand anymore. Their hands weren't steady. They were sloppy. Like Irwin Hazen, he tended to go out of the a lot. But Shelley and Dick Sprang, they're just, and a lot of times I looked at it that the original art's not available in a lot of these things and not out there. So in my mind, having Sprang recreation that he colored too, it's like the next best thing. It's the guy who did the original. He drew it. It's his hand. I'm never going to be able to either find or afford. So these things for the price points were right at the time. And they're just beautiful to look at. Like I said, check out, I have a few in this auction. They're just beautiful. And
So the reason I pulled this,
there's nothing better than Dick Sprang's Joker. Always
No.
my favorite. Always my favorite Joker.
the reason I pulled this up is because there is a question somebody asked, and I want to get to everybody's questions in the Q&A, which is, for such an incredible collection, I'm surprised that there do not appear to be any mile highs. This one is the Boston pedigree. Is there a reason, someone asked, is there a reason that there are no mile highs?
Stupidity. I had a few Batman mile highs that I sold over the years because I was able to get a really nice copy, or a copy that was the same grade as the mile high. So it was like, to me, it was a trade-off. And at the time, you get like 4 times guide, for a mile high. So I said, you know what? I have a 9.6 mile high, and I could get a 9.6, and it's still the highest grade. I sold the mile high. I had, if I remember correctly, I had 5 or 6 pre-hero mile high detectives, Crimson Avenger cover, a lot of those cops and robber had mile highs of those. But since when I decided to only collect Batman, I sold those. I did have the mile high to the Detective 26, which I should have kept because it's the first time there's that little panel. It's saying coming next month, the Batman. And so that was the first mention of him. I should have held on to that. But yeah, somebody has it.
I wanted to ask you about this one because obviously this is incredibly special. We see the price is already at $92.5 without the buyer's premium. Aaron, when you look at this, when you see the 9.8 here, when you see the Boston pedigree, certainly this is the new Batgirl. Does anything surprise you at this point when it comes to what people are willing to pay and what they certainly? We saw Detective 27 sell for $1.5 million just a few weeks ago. Batman #1 in this auction is already at 1.53, and it's extraordinary. So these are already the highest prices ever paid for Batman comic books. And media outlets have been reaching out over the last several weeks, wondering what accounts for this extraordinary interest in Batman.
Batman's he's one of the great characters of all time, truly. And it's this thing that the market's amazing, but you see a lot of people getting in. It's I think one of the great things about high-end comics, investment grade comics, is it's a place you could put your money, but also your childhood is wrapped up in it. I think it's so appealing to a lot of people. But yeah, then you get these characters, the first appearance of Batgirl. Batgirl's huge. She's been around, from 1967 to now. Like, she's still a huge character in the DC universe. She's this book means so much to me on so many levels, because this was one of those books that my father, not this copy.
I was going to say, wow.
Right, not this copy, but this was one of the books that my father, I woke up on a Sunday morning, it was next to the bed. And I remember, because I was one of those kids, I was watching Batman, twice a week. I was one of those kids glued to my TV watching the Adam West show when it was originally broadcast. And, I was a big Batman fan, and I've had more copies of this issue throughout the years, always trying to get a better one, And this, it means so much to me, this book, because when the collection was stolen and we worked out them returning them, I went to my attorney's office, and the father and son that stole them had their attorney bringing them back to my attorney's office, where we were going to spend, unknowns to me, the next 7.5 hours going through every book to make sure they didn't crack it out of the case, to make sure that they didn't do anything to any of the books, that the cases were intact, that everything was there. When they returned them, the guy brought them back in these big plastic tubs. And this was when I went through that whole, all that time of these books being gone, not knowing if I see them. This was one of the books that like just pained me so, because when I got this book, there were 3 9/8, and in all these years since I've had this book, only one more has appeared. And so there's only 4 9/8, but mine is a pedigree. I don't know if any of the other three are from pedigrees. I don't know that. So when I got to the lawyer's office and then we started taking these tubs off of his truck, I opened the first tub, and the first book that I saw that was faced up was this book. It was like if nothing else was in those tubs, I was just so happy that I was getting this book back, and the bad thing for me was that, when I had Post-its on the back of every book of what I paid for each book, and the criminals, they threw away all my Post-its. They took off all the CGC bags. So every case was just rubbing against each other. So I did have a handful that had to be slabbed, but there's so many books that I have no idea what I paid for them, which is sad, because I would have liked to have known, over all these years what I made on the book. But there's, in so many cases, I have no idea, because they threw out all my information.
I think
But
it's fair to say this
book,
one will sell for more than what you paid for it.
yes, it's already there, but it's a beautiful, beautiful book, and it's such a tough book. And it's like this one and the Batman, what is it, the 171, the Riddler, those really coincide with the TV show, and that was another book that's stolen and is in this auction. And it's a 9.4, and the highest grade out there is 9.6, another very, very hard book. Oh, Aaron, maybe there's 3 or 4 9.6s of the Batman 171, so 9.4, I think there's like 11 or 12 something. It's, again, another really, really hard book.
By the way, for folks who do want to know, every one of these lots, every one of these online catalog pages does actually have a CGC census report, so you can actually see where this falls into the census. You can see that this 9.8 of this Detective 359 is one of 4 that exists, and you can see how many have been graded, how many have been restored, and how many have been qualified, and so forth. So when you see Randy's here, you know that that's the CGC census.
I never even knew there were so many, over 2,000 that is graded, and there's only 4 9/8. It's incredible.
And none higher. That is kind of the fun thing about looking at all of these things, as you sit here and look at the, we can scroll down and look at all of these pages and look at the fact that here's your 7.5. It's the only one.
Yeah, you can see that's it. It's a qualified one.
Right.
That's it.
It's a lot of fun to go through these reports and kind of see what you have and what folks might be interested in. This obviously, here's a Batman, 121.
Mm-hmm.
Big book. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Appearance of Mr. Freeze.
It's beautiful. You guys had a copy in last big auction. Also was a 9.0. This is just a prettier, not because it's mine. It's just a prettier 9.0, though it's whiter. It's a tough book with that white snow, and there's a couple of stress lines on the spine. I was hoping this was going to get a 9.2, but it's got white pages, and I think the one you sold last time was off white to white. But yeah, it's a tough book. Tough book. 194 for a lot of shekels not too long ago. Yeah, it's a beautiful copy.
Are there particular books that are in this auction that are harder for you to part with than others? And obviously, we talked about this before, about the fact that all collectors are but temporary custodians of history. Are there particular books, however, I would think that certainly that we talked about this Detective 359.
A lot of the Golden Age stuff was really, the first auction was harder for me to sit through than I think this one's going to be. Probably because I was like collecting, a lot of these Silver Age books, like not the really early ones. I was too young, but I was buying off the newsstand Silver Age stuff, or my father leaving them for me. So the Golden Age, the hunt for those older books, they're just, the artwork over the years, to me today, so much of the artwork is so similar, you really, to me, everything looks like everybody else today for the most part. But when you go back and you look at the artists in the golden age, you knew who was really drawing. You knew whose Joker that was. You knew it was just different. The stories. Batman was a little bit more whimsical. He was a little bit more, comical. The Dick Sprang Batman compared to the Neil Adams Batman, just a whole different look. So I miss the golden age stuff, and I'm gonna miss that Batgirl book and the Riddler book. I have pictures. There's only a handful that I took pictures of before Aaron took them away, to Heritage, that I have on my phone. That just meant a lot. That Batgirl book, yeah, that's a real special book. And
Randy, we have high resolution photos of all of them, so you can.
Well, they're going to be downloaded. Now I'm going to have them all. But yeah, that book you're showing, it's just really special. And
I love this one. This is one of the first ones that I ever bought. This is from 1970. I bought this at a comic book convention because I love the cover, and this is where I fell in love with Neil Adams. So for me, this one is really one that I have great connection to.
Right, great book. It's already, I think, at like $12,000, $9,800.
Oh yeah, it's
nice book.
That's a hot one.
Oh, this is great. I'm like, people are jumping all over. Again, it's from the Boston pedigree. It's got white pages, Scarecrow. Beautiful, beautiful book.
Aaron, do you know how many firsts are in this auction? Certainly, first Batgirl, first Mr. Freeze, first Silver Age Scarecrow.
There are quite a few.
I don't know how many first appearances. I don't know. I just know how many highest grades there are. But there are a lot of first appearances in this auction.
Yeah, I don't know how many offhand, but yeah, I guess all of the those supervillains that popped up from the late 50s on.
Yeah, you got the first Silver Age Penguin, first Silver Age Scarecrow, first Silver Age Batgirl, Polka Dot Man. You've got a lot of first appearances or first Silver Age appearances.
Right.
Like Scarecrow is only on one cover ever in the Golden Age. I think it's Batman 73. I think. You sold that in the last auction, and now this is his, second cover.
Let's talk a little bit about the Boston pedigree. Let's talk about what makes it so special. Certainly in the fact that, Randy, as you went trying to get the very best of the very best when you stumbled across the Boston pedigree and how difficult it was to accrue these.
Well, like anything else, Boston, I had a lot of Boston pedigrees that came up, a lot of Pacific Coast I have in the collection. There's a lot of pedigrees in the Golden Age. There was a couple of Larsons. You pay more, but they're just the stories behind all of these pedigrees. Like the Mile High collection. It's just such an incredible story, and these guys took such good care of these books. Like it still amazes me. It still amazes me when you see a Golden Age book from 1940 with white pages and sharp, and the colors are so vibrant. Like, what did that boy do? Book, or what didn't he do? It's like, I said last time, I buy today's newspaper. I go sit outside. By the time I'm finished, the newspapers, it's like yellowing. I don't know how 80 years later, the pages are white. Pedigrees are really cool. They command more money. They command more money.
I wanted to ask Aaron about that too. Folks who might be interested in a Batman 189, certainly a 9.8 is going to be incredibly hard to find. The Boston pedigree obviously makes it even more significant. How many folks will pass up a 9.8 or a 9 whatever in a particular comic book because they are looking for that particular pedigree?
How many will pass it up?
Well, how many will say, I don't want that one because I'm looking for a pedigree book. I'm looking for, Randy even talked about the fact that, when there are certain books, there are certain provenance, or a certain pedigree that makes a book even more special. In Randy's case, for instance, the fact that these were newsworthy, they were stolen, they were recovered. This is the Boston pedigree. This book itself, aside from the fact that it is the first appearance of the Silver Age Scarecrow, its story also makes it special. Its pedigree makes it special.
Yeah, when you have these named collections, they earn a pedigree because the collection as a whole is just deemed to be exemplary. in terms of quality and range. So yeah, I think that definitely it's something that people want, a comic that is from a, like I said, known collection. They know this history, they know where it came from before it came to them. Usually, you know, if you have a pedigree, that's a original owner collection. And
Yeah,
so that's
for me, it really, if it was a pedigree, great. But for me, it was like more the highest grade, the best copy out there. If it was if it was a pedigree, I knew I was going to end up paying more. But for me, it was just to get the best of the best. I probably on this book, I probably had a 9.2, and then I had a 9.4, maybe I had a 9.6. I just kept selling, upgrading. And, if I saw a 9.8, I wasn't going to pass on it because it was a pedigree, or I wasn't going to jump on it just because it was a pedigree. I was jumping on it because it was a 9.8 white page, highest grade, first appearance, everything about it was just, you don't pass these things up because you don't know when it's going to come back. Like,
Right.
I don't think
It's
all these
true.
books that you're selling are my books, and many books that you sell from other people, these get socked away into collections. Chances of you seeing a lot of these books, for a long time, it probably won't happen. It's funny because there are those people, dealers, that buy them, and all of a sudden, within weeks, you see them for sale in various places. And I've been looking because I wanted to see, somebody, if they were going to try and sell these books. I haven't seen one book since that first auction come up for sale anywhere. Because I think, these are just really special, and they're going into more so collectors' hands than dealer hands, for the main reason that they're pricey, and it's not leaving a lot of dealers a lot of room, I think, to be able to flip these books so fast. So if a dealer is buying some of these, I don't think you're going to see them for a while because they need to accrue something that makes sense for them to sell. But a
Right.
collector is like, my thing was always just get the book, worry about everything after, just secure that book and know that it's going to go into your collection. And like, there are so many of these books that have been in my collection for 25, 30 years. They haven't been on the market. They haven't been seen. Yeah, there's a handful that if you did the research, you could see that maybe I got it at a heritage auction, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. But like that Batgirl book, and there's so many books that I've had for so long that that's why I think it's everyone's jumping on top of it, because I don't even know the last time Detective 359 9.8 came on the market for sale. I don't even, I don't remember seeing one. I
Right. I mean, you can't reiterate that enough, that these highest graded copies, you're not going to get another chance, probably
right.
not in the short term, maybe
Right.
not in the long term. Like if you are looking for high grade copies, the highest graded copies, then, you got to jump on it while they're available.
Sometimes you get burned, and I remember years ago, I bought a Luke Cage #1 9.8. I paid, it was like maybe one of two at the time. And I paid so much money for that 9.8. And then before I knew it, everybody that had Luke Cage's high grade, all of a sudden from being 2, they were like 30. And whatever I spent was like, I took a big hit when I sold that book. But these books that are 80 years old, there's all of a sudden there's not going to be a 9.9 of these books show up on the market. Maybe if you buy it, there's a highest grade 8.5. Maybe a 9.0 will show up, maybe. But if you look, it would have happened already. People already know what they have, and they know the value of these books. And if there's a single highest grade is an 8.0, and some guy's got a 9.0, not that he would sell it, but he would grade it. He would, he'd send it to CGC and know that he's got the highest grade. But it's just, they're not out. They're just not there. And I
Just want to remind everybody before we wrap this up, if you have a question, go ahead and drop it in the Q&A. But again, this is for the comic signature art sale that begins on January 14th, Thursday at noon, first session. Randy has several books in the first session and scattered throughout, and they will be sold. The Alfred Pennyworth collection will be sold throughout the next few weeks in weeklies as well. Is there any particular, I think if we have video games in some sessions, we have comic books, but just make sure that when you're looking at, if you're looking for an Alfred Pennyworth, look for the ones with the stickers, just like these here.
Look at that book. Look at that book. Batman 100. Great book. I mean, just, you know, I get excited because, you know, I remember buying them and chasing them, but they're just beautiful. They're just beautiful, beautiful books. And for
I've always
those,
loved it.
for those
This is a great one.
listening, you know, people that bought, you know, from the first auction, I'm sure at this point they have them in their possession. You know what's in the collection. They're just beautiful. And for those who are joining us now for the first time, or didn't get anything last time, you know, jump on these books. If you're a Batman fan and you're a collector, grab these things while you can, because they're just not, you're not going to see them for a while. They're beautiful.
They really are. It's an amazing collection. It really is, just top notch across the board. So it's been a real pleasure to be able to work with them. It truly has. And
Randy, well, I guess, Randy, I don't think you want to give out your email address, but I know Aaron does if folks have questions.
Absolutely. You can get me at aaronw@ha.com, and that's spelled AARONW@HA.com.
Yeah,
but make sure when you are browsing that
just show me. Look at these books. I mean, this has never been on the market. That book has never been on the market. It's the single highest graded copy. It's never been sold on the market ever. I've had that for a long time. And when I graded it, it was the single highest grade. I don't even know when that was graded. You know, when CGC first came around, and all these years later, there hasn't been another copy.
It is so much fun to go look for your collection.
They're all there. These are all highest graded copies.
Yeah.
It is just a lot of fun to go through your collection, Randy.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, it's a happy, sad thing for me. But
well, gentlemen, I do appreciate it. If folks have questions, Aaron is free to talk, and we'll post this on Facebook, and folks can watch it again. You can email me at robertw@ha.com if you have questions. Randy, congratulations. Good luck. This has certainly been a great thrill to be able to talk to you and to.
Thank you for all your help.
You bet. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you on Thursday at noon.
Aaron, talk to you soon.
Sounds great.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Take
guys.
care.